My name is Layla. I'm 31 years old. For most of my life, I believed my worth depended entirely on the gaze and approval of the man who controlled me most, my father. I grew up in a traditional, deeply religious Muslim family in a small desert town where everyone knew our last name. My father wasn't just an authority figure. He was a sheikh, a respected, almost revered spiritual leader. When he entered the mosque, silence fell. People hung on his every word as if they were commands from God himself. Inside our house, his voice wasn't just a rule, it was law. Every command sounded like a divine decree. We lived in a gated compound, almost like a fortress. My father had 2 wives, many children, and so much power that even the police avoided contradicting him. On the outside, we appeared to be a blessed family. On the inside, we lived as prisoners of a twisted faith. As a child, I was considered one of the favorite daughters, the obedient one. Always with my head down, eyes on the ground, never looking at a man. I knew all the prayers, every rule, and I conformed to what was expected of me. But inside, there was a restlessness I couldn't explain. It wasn't hunger for food, though many nights I went to bed without eating after the guests had been served first. It was a deeper emptiness, a thirst to be truly seen, not as just another daughter among so many siblings. I wanted someone to recognize me as unique, as valuable in my own right. I remember when I was 13, sneaking up to the rooftop at night. The sky seemed distant, but I'd still speak to it. "Hey, you up there? Do you see me? Do you care? Or are you just counting how many rules I break?" There was never an answer. Only the cold silence of the stars and the desert wind that carried my words away into nothing. By the time I reached my 20s, I was already shouldering heavy responsibilities. I practically ran the entire household for my father's second wife, who was young and inexperienced. I hosted dinners, arranged visits, and knew every silent gesture and unwritten protocol that kept our routine running smoothly. In our culture, the expected destiny for a daughter was marriage, and the better the husband, the greater the honor for the family. But my father never showed any signs of looking for someone for me. In my naivety, I thought it was out of respect, perhaps because he believed I wasn't ready yet. But the truth was quite different, and it would shatter everything I thought I knew about protection, faith, and family. It all happened on a seemingly ordinary night, right after the Isha prayer. I was in my room when I was called to my father's study. I walked with my eyes fixed on the floor as I'd learned since childhood, waiting to hear some instruction. He called me by name, Layla, in a soft tone that left me confused. He told me I had always been obedient, faithful, pure, and devoted. I nodded shyly, unsure of where this conversation was going. Then he leaned back in his chair and said something that made my entire body freeze. "I have chosen you for myself. You will be my wife." For a few seconds, I thought I had heard wrong. I repeated, almost in a whisper, "Your wife?" He smiled as if he'd just said something beautiful. He explained that the prophet had special permissions, and that as a sheikh, he did too. "This is halal before Allah," he said. "You will live with more honor than any other woman in this city." My legs felt weak. He opened the Quran and began quoting passages about submission, honor, and the blessing of being close to a man of God. But I could no longer hear anything. The sound around me became a distant hum. My vision blurred. My chest felt heavy. Inside me, the daughter wanted to scream, "You are my father." The Muslim I was raised to be trembled, unsure if this was truly God's will or just a cruel distortion to justify the unthinkable. And the woman, the simple woman in me, felt the world crumble. Something broke inside me that night. The man I had always feared and obeyed was no longer just my father. Now he wanted to take possession of my body, using God's name to justify his abuse. And in that closed world, no one would dare question him. To everyone, he was the holy man. But to me, he revealed himself as the oppressor I needed to escape. My mother couldn't help me. She was his first wife and feared him as much as I did. She learned early on that silence was safer than any attempt at resistance. Between them, I never saw love, only obedience and distance. My brothers couldn't help either. They were raised with the same rigid and frightening logic. A sheikh's word was sacred, untouchable, equivalent to the word of God. To question my father would, for them, be to defy Allah himself. When I left the office that night, my feet carried me mechanically outside, but my soul remained inside, shattered. I didn't say a word. Outside, the silence was absolute, but inside me, there was a deafening noise. My heart was torn between fear and disbelief. If you're listening to this now and wondering how something like this could happen, I tell you with all sincerity, it happens much more than you imagine. Women like me have lived for centuries trapped in this silence that slowly kills. I need to pause for just a moment because what I'm about to share might be the most important part of my story. If this testimony has reached you, if it's touched your heart in any way, please don't keep it to yourself. Share it, talk about it, leave a comment below. Not for numbers, likes, or followers, but because right now, maybe even near you, there's a woman sitting in a room like the one I was in, feeling alone, thinking no one would ever believe her. Maybe your simple act of sharing is the spark of hope she needs. Because what happened to me isn't just a story of pain, it's also the story of a God who saw me when I thought I was invisible. A God who entered my darkness when all I felt was abandonment. Yes, it's a story of abuse, but much more than that. It's the story of how I was found when I thought I was lost forever. There are nights we never forget, no matter how hard we try. Nights when the air feels heavier and every shadow seems alive, watching our steps. The night it all came together was one of those. 2 weeks had passed since that conversation in the office when my father announced that I would be his wife. The next 14 days felt like a nightmare from which I couldn't wake up. On the outside, I continued cooking, sweeping, helping with the housework. But on the inside, every gesture was like a silent ticking, a countdown to something I couldn't stop. There was no engagement, no party, much less a choice, just his voice, the voice of authority, repeating, "It's decided." That night, after prayers, he called me to his chambers. My hands were cold, my legs barely supporting me as I walked. Deep down, I still had a foolish hope. Maybe he'd changed his mind. Maybe it was all just a test. But as soon as I walked in, I knew there was no turning back. The strong smell of wood incense made the air stifling. The room was immaculate. Sheets were taut. Pillows were lined up. 2 cups of tea steamed on the table next to dates arranged with almost ceremonial precision. My father wore a crisp white robe, his beard combed and lightly oiled. His gaze held a different intensity, and it wasn't the gaze of a father. When he motioned for me to sit, I felt my feet stick to the floor. Everything in me screamed to run. "Layla," he said in the deepest, most controlled voice I had ever heard. "Today we begin our life as husband and wife." My stomach churned as if I'd been punched. I wanted to speak, scream, run. I wanted to say, "This is wrong. You're my father." But no words came out. The only thing I could mutter was, "Baba, please." Then came the final blow. He frowned and replied coldly, "Don't call me that anymore. Today I'm your husband." That sentence shattered me. My heart was pounding so hard it felt like it was about to burst from my chest. He continued speaking as if nothing were wrong, about honor, submission, quoting hadith and stories of the Prophet. He said the Prophet married Zainab by Allah's command, and that as a spiritual leader he had the same right. While serving tea as if it were a family conversation, he asked the cruelest question, "Do you think you are more righteous than the mothers of believers?" Every word, every quote was like a nail closing the coffin of my freedom. I remained silent, but inside, I begged God to save me. Then came the threat disguised as a teaching. If you resist, you will be resisting Allah, and the woman who resists her husband will be cursed by the angels until dawn. In that instant, I understood something terrible. What was happening wasn't just a father's sin. It was the manipulation of an entire faith twisted to justify abuse. The religion that taught me to fear God was being used as a chain to keep me captive. My prison wasn't just walls. It had distorted verses and traditions used to uphold the unjustifiable. That wasn't just a crime. It was sacrilege, and I, in the center of it all, felt empty. But what I didn't yet know was that even there, on that night of darkness, God was already plotting an escape route. That day, He dismissed the servants early and ordered my stepmother not to approach His chambers for any reason. The last door between me and the world closed. I stood still, motionless, knowing that from that moment on, I was not just a prisoner of silence. I was captive to the will of a man who used the name of God to legitimize the unthinkable. I won't describe in detail what happened that night. Not out of fear, not out of shame, because it was never my fault, but because I want you to remember me not as a victim of what was done to me, but as someone rescued by a God who sees. What I can say is that when the Adhan, the call to prayer, echoed through the city that early morning, something inside me had already died. My body was still breathing, but my faith was in ruins. Since childhood, I'd been told that Islam is a religion of honor, especially for women, that if I obey Allah, He will protect me, that men of faith like my father are sent by God, bearers of light and justice. But that morning, lying next to the person who should have been my protector and not my oppressor, I finally allowed myself to ask the question I had always tried to keep quiet inside myself. If this is God's will, is He really good? The words came out of me like a broken whisper straight from my soul and went unanswered. And the absence of that answer hurt more than anything. The next morning, as if nothing had happened, I served my father tea. He smiled in front of the others, calling me my beloved. Before the community, I remained the Sheikh's gracious daughter. But behind closed doors, I was no longer a daughter. I was a possession acquired by force, without choice, without a voice. After that day, I returned to my room, locked the door, and for the first time said a prayer that wasn't in the holy books, nor part of the rituals I'd learned. It wasn't a memorized plea. It was a scream, a prayer made of pain and despair. Face down on the floor and heart in pieces, I cried and said, Allah, if you see me, if you really care, then take me out of here or take my life. The silence that returned was like a cold echo. Nothing happened. No answer, no sign, no peace. I think it was there that the first crack appeared in the walls that supported my faith. It wasn't a visible rupture, but a barely perceptible fissure, the kind we try to ignore but that over time turns into a collapse. Because admitting that perhaps the God I knew wasn't as I'd been taught was terrifying. If He weren't my protector, where could I run? But the truth is, cracks grow, and soon everything began to crumble. I need to pause my story for a moment and ask you something. Have you ever felt that knot in your stomach during prayer? That silent question that terrifies you? What if all of this isn't true? I remember how alone I felt in those moments, believing I was the only one with these forbidden thoughts. If you're feeling this way right now, I want you to know something. You are not alone. There are thousands watching this who understand exactly what you're experiencing. The fear, the confusion, the silence that feels like it's suffocating you. Would you be brave enough to share just a small part of your journey? You can simply comment, I sometimes question too, or I understand this struggle. Your words, even anonymous ones, might be exactly what someone else needs to feel less alone in their darkest moment. I know this takes courage. I know some of you may need to use a different account or device. Your safety matters more than anything. But if you can, your comment might be the first time someone else feels truly understood. Now, let me continue with what happened next. Today, I understand that there are prisons that don't need bars or chains. Some of the cruelest are built on sacred words, family traditions, and the shame imposed on those who dare question them. My prison was like this. It had no iron, but its walls were built with religious authority and fear. The man who should have been just my father was now also my jailer, and according to him, my husband. After that night, the little freedom I had practically disappeared. As a daughter, I could at least visit my stepmother, accompany other women to the market, or participate, albeit discreetly, in family gatherings. But now, everything had changed. My father said I had been elevated, chosen for a special role, and that it was for my honor. In reality, he hid me. He locked me away. My room became a cell. I could only go out covered from head to toe and always accompanied by someone he trusted. Meals were brought to me. When there were visitors at home, even family, I stayed out of sight. Not even my brothers could see me. It wasn't the seclusion of a beloved wife. It was the isolation of someone who needed to be kept secret. He controlled everything. What I said, who I talked to, when I could go out. Even my prayers were observed. At the mosque, I sat among the women, eyes on the floor, hands clasped in my lap, silent, invisible. When the imam praised obedient wives during his Friday sermons, I felt their gazes on me, full of admiration, ignoring the truth. They saw me as an example of purity and devotion, and in a cruel way that made everything even more unbearable. I experienced a humiliation so profound that to this day I lack words to describe it. Once during a family gathering, my father's first wife, my mother, asked me to serve tea. As always, I went to the kitchen, prepared the tray, and entered the living room, balancing each cup carefully but with a heavy heart. It was a common moment, something I'd done dozens of times before. But on that occasion, my father looked at me with a smile and said in front of everyone, "Uncles, cousins, elders, this is my beloved wife. She serves me with excellence." The entire room fell silent, a heavy, suffocating silence. Some looked away, others lowered their heads. No one said anything. And that silence hurt more than if someone had screamed. Because in that moment I understood, everyone knew, and no one would do anything. A few men shifted uncomfortably on their cushions, looking around, but none of them dared speak. After all, no one, absolutely no one, questioned a sheikh. It was as if trying to silence his voice was like trying to silence the word of God, or so they said. After that day, the whispers began. In the women's rooms, in the stuffy hallways between the tea and the carpets, I heard the words poisoned by ignorance. She received a special honor. She was chosen. God must have favored her above the others. And I wanted to scream from the depths of my soul. This is no honor. It's a prison with golden walls. But I didn't scream because in the world I lived in, silence wasn't just a choice. It was a matter of survival. Silence was the shield that kept me from disappearing completely. At night, I would lie with my eyes open, staring at the ceiling, feeling the blankets around me like invisible chains. Each fold weighed like iron, and I prayed. Oh, how I prayed, 5 times a day, sometimes even more. I began to pray louder, more desperately, thinking that perhaps my insistence could move God's heart. I knelt until my knees ached so badly I could barely walk afterward. I cried to be seen, to be heard, to be set free. But the words bounced off the ceiling and came back to me like dead dust, falling on my face, reminding me that nothing changed. There's something no one tells you about praying when you're trapped. Prayer can become a kind of madness. I repeated the same phrases over and over, thinking that maybe this time the heavens would open. I began fasting more than necessary, as if physical pain were a form of exchange with the divine. I rubbed clay on my skin, believing that my impurity was what prevented me from being saved. And when nothing happened, I began to wonder if God was really listening, or if he ever had. But the worst, the cruelest, was having to pretend. I had to be the obedient daughter, the discreet wife, the devout woman the community expected, pretending in front of my stepmother, the other wives, my younger sisters so they wouldn't discover the terror that consumed me. I became an actress in my own life. My daily life became a theater where I smiled on the outside and died on the inside. But no play lasts forever, and small cracks began to appear in the script. One afternoon, while I was cleaning the hallway near the main room, I heard my father talking to another man. I remember that day as if it were happening now. I was cleaning the hallway near the main room when I heard my father talking to another religious leader. They spoke with the confidence of those who knew no one would ever dare confront them. They laughed shamelessly, commenting that wives were property, part of a man's wealth. One of them mentioned that the prophet's companions sometimes married their brothers' widows to keep the inheritance in the family. Then my father said with pride in his voice, "Layla understands her place. She knows that obedience is her beauty." My hands were shaking so badly that the tray fell to the floor. The clang of metal echoed like thunder, but no one came out to see what had happened. That night, I locked my door and knelt on the rug. But for the first time, I didn't pray to Allah. With my forehead pressed to the floor and my eyes brimming with tears, I could only whisper, "Whoever you are, if you're there, please see me." That was it. A short sentence, almost nothing. But in that moment, something changed. For the first time, I wasn't speaking to a God full of rules and rituals. I was speaking to someone, perhaps the true God, with my heart completely exposed. The next day, my father brought me a gift, a gold bracelet. He said it was for my obedience, as if it were a reward. I slipped it on my wrist, and the cold metal felt more like delicate handcuffs. That's when I understood. Even his kindness was part of the captivity. Everything was under control. Even the seemingly generous gestures were chains in disguise. My despair was already turning into a deep numbness. But even so, the true God was already moving, about to break through the walls of my prison in ways I could never have imagined. It was late afternoon. The house was plunged into a golden silence, bathed in soft sunlight streaming through the cracks in the curtains. My father was at the mosque as usual. The other women were busy in the kitchen. It was the only time of day I could breathe. I was in his office cleaning the dark wood shelves as I did every week when my eyes fell on one of the oldest copies of the Quran, the one he used to teach his disciples. It was larger, heavier, with a worn cover and pages marked from use. Without thinking, I opened the book and let the pages move on their own, stopping wherever they pleased. They fell on a familiar section, Surah Al-Ahzab, chapter 33. I'd read parts of it before, but never with tired eyes, never with a broken soul. And there, in verse 50, was the key to it all. "O Prophet, we permit you to take as wives the women who offer themselves to you, those whom your right hand possesses, the wives of certain relatives, exclusive privileges, something which no other man will have." I read it again, more slowly, almost with fear. Each word was like a blade opening an old wound. These words weren't strange to me. They were familiar. I'd heard them from my father before. He always said that as a religious leader, he had rights other men didn't. That our union was a blessing, an honor other women would envy. That resisting would be like resisting God himself. And now, there on the pages I held with trembling hands, was the same justification written. It wasn't his invention. It was like a divine seal legitimizing everything that was destroying me. I closed the book with difficulty, as if each page weighed twice as much. My entire faith had been built on the idea that Islam protected women, that abuse came from men, not from religion. For years I repeated this to myself like a mantra to survive, to keep from breaking down completely. But now, looking at that book, at those words, I sat there on the floor, leaning against the cold wooden shelves, my heart racing and my mind spinning. And I realized maybe it wasn't just men. The permission was there, written, accepted, proclaimed. Without thinking, I muttered almost in a whisper, "So is this what the Lord is?" The room responded with a dense, suffocating silence. It wasn't just an absence of sound. It was an absence of meaning, an absence of God. I remembered the tears my mother never shed, the way she endured everything without complaint, believing it was her sacred duty. I remembered the women in our community with their dull eyes, hunched shoulders, trapped in forced marriages, accepting polygamy, experiencing abandonment, all in the name of faith, all with the same justifications I had just read. For the first time, I didn't question my father. I questioned God, and that was the question that scared me the most. Have I been wrong all along? Because if this God were truly the author of my pain, he was no better than the man who had imprisoned me. And no matter how hard I tried to push that thought away, it remained there, throbbing inside me like an unspoken but echoing blasphemy. The fear of offending a powerful God made me expect immediate punishment, a lightning strike, a fainting spell, anything. But nothing happened. And this hurt even more, because even when I questioned him, he remained silent. I kept that doubt inside me like a shard hidden in my skin. I didn't tell my stepmother, who continued to live as if nothing were wrong. I didn't tell my younger sisters because I wanted to protect them. I didn't even dare talk about it in the women's space at the mosque, where everything was made of rules, appearances, and blind devotion. But even hidden, that doubt hurt me every day. An invisible wound that bled every time I took a deep breath, until another night of deceit and anguish arrived. My father asked me to serve tea to a guest, another sheikh visiting from a neighboring town. I stood there, tray in hand, listening to them talk about male leadership, about the need to keep women in their place. They used verses as weapons. They laughed at the idea that a woman could know her own worth. And once again, I heard that phrase. And if a believing woman offers herself to the prophet. Before, it sounded like holiness. Now it sounded like sanctified abuse. That night when I lay down, I didn't kneel as before. I didn't recite verses. I didn't turn my face toward Mecca because at that point, I no longer knew to whom I was praying. For the first time, I admitted to myself, I don't know who you are, and I don't know if I want to know. But in the darkness, without form, without ritual, without courage, I whispered, if the Lord is real, if the Lord is good, show me, because I can't take it anymore. And today I know that was my first real prayer. Not to a religion, not to a set of rules, but to someone whose name I didn't yet know, but who heard me. And it was this prayer, born from my rawest pain, that began to break the silence that had enveloped me for 31 years. I don't know if you've ever been in a place so dark that even existing feels like an unbearable weight. I've been there, in that place where the air seems to be lacking, not from a lack of oxygen, but from an excess of pain, where life ceases to be present and becomes a sentence. The weight of what my father imposed on me, the silence of God, doubt eating away at my faith like acid. Everything about me seemed to crush until I could barely breathe. It was a seemingly ordinary evening. Isha's Adhan had already been chanted. The courtyard was silent. The lights in the house dimmed as if even the walls were tired. And amidst this stillness, something was about to happen. Something that would change everything. I was alone in the room. The silence was as heavy as the air. The only light came from a small lamp in the corner, casting a yellowish circle on the floor, as if even the light was afraid to spread. My gaze fell on the gold bracelet my father had given me days before. It was supposed to symbolize honor, obedience, reward. But there, against my skin, it burned like a hot iron. It was as if it screamed what I was trying to ignore. You are property. You are possession. I removed it in a quick, almost impatient movement, like someone ripping off a chain. I placed it on the table, not as if guarding something precious, but as if returning a prison. And it was there that I whispered with a trembling voice, no. This no wasn't just for the present. It was for everything. For the God who didn't seem to see me, for the silence that consumed me, for the life I was told was my destiny. If you are there, if you are real, if you see me, please come. At some point, I lost consciousness. I don't know if it was exhaustion, despair, or if that prayer broke something, but it wasn't an ordinary sleep. It was deep, as if I'd passed through an invisible portal. Suddenly, I was in a vast, endless desert. The ground was pale sand. The sky was covered in a silvery light that wasn't blinding, but wasn't welcoming either. The silence was so dense it felt like the whole world was holding its breath. I looked down. My feet were bare. My abaya was torn, dirty, fluttering like rags around my body. I felt small, weak, stripped of all dignity. Then I saw him. In the distance, a man was walking toward me. He was dressed in white, but not ordinary white. It was a vivid, pulsating white, as if the light itself had woven the garment. The brightness surrounding him didn't come from the sun. It came from him. Each step was calm, steady, and filled with purpose. My heart raced, but not with fear. There was something about this man that made me feel safe, as if his very presence said, "You are safe now." When he finally got close, he didn't say anything right away. He just looked into my eyes. And in that look, I knew he saw me. Not as property, not as a sheikh's daughter, not as a wife against her will. He saw the 13-year-old girl who gazed at the stars on the terrace, and the 31-year-old woman who no longer believed in anything. He saw every tear I never cried, every stifled plea, every word I didn't dare say. Then he spoke. His voice was soft, but full of authority, like the sound of truth itself. "You are not possession. You are mine." Those words ripped through me like thunder, but at the same time, like water in the desert. It made no religious sense to me at that moment. I didn't understand theology, nor the exact meaning, but I knew deep down in my soul that it was true. I couldn't stand. I knelt there as if my legs had lost all strength. The tears came like heavy rain, loose, heavy, liberating. I tried to ask who he was, but I could barely speak. Between sobs, I just whispered, "Who is the Lord?" He smiled. It wasn't the pitying smile some men give to broken women. It was a smile full of love, pure love, love that doesn't demand, love that doesn't hurt. And then he said, "I am the one who has always seen you." Those words shattered me, because until that moment, no one had ever truly seen me, not as I really was. But he had. Then he reached out his hand to me. When I took it, I didn't just feel warmth. I felt life, real life. A wave ran through my entire body, penetrating not just my skin, but also reaching wounds no one had ever seen. The pain didn't go away, but for the first time, I wasn't alone in it. And that was the moment I woke up. I returned to my room. The lamp still cast its yellow circle on the floor. The world seemed the same, but I knew it wasn't. My face was wet with tears, and my heart beat differently. There was something new there, something silent but firm, like a seed planted amid the rubble of my faith. The weight of pain was still there, but now there was something underneath supporting it, a foundation where before there had been only sand. The next morning, I waited until the house was empty. I went to my stepmother's closet and found an old phone still working. With trembling fingers, I went online and typed, "Muslim woman dreams of man dressed in white." I wasn't prepared for what I found. Hundreds of stories emerged. Syria, Iran, Egypt, Lebanon, Indonesia, Somalia. Real testimonies from men and women like me, devout Muslims who had dreamed of a man dressed in white. They all described the same look, the same words, "You are mine." And they all said the same name, Jesus. My heart raced. I knew Isa, the Isa of the Quran. I had always been taught that he was merely a prophet, a respectable one, yes, but human, never divine, never the Son of God, never someone to pray to. But there was something in those stories, something that ignited a deep hope within me. It was as if I were hearing a song my soul had always wanted to sing, but never knew the melody. I kept reading, watching videos of ex-Muslims, listening to their trembling but joyful voices. They spoke of a peace they had never felt before, of a love that didn't need to be earned, of a savior who came to them when no one else could. That night, I lay there with my heart racing, and for the first time, I dared to say his name in a low voice. Jesus. The word sounded strange on my lips, but not in my heart. If it was the Lord, if he is real, please come back. I want to know the Lord. I didn't know what would happen next. I didn't know if anyone would hear me, but deep down, something told me I was no longer alone. that someone had found me at my darkest point and called me theirs. I thought I was being careful. I swore to myself no one would ever find out. Whenever I borrowed my stepmother's old cell phone, I locked the doors, kept my ears open, and my heart racing. That afternoon, I was completely absorbed in a video. It was the testimony of a woman from Yemen, a former Muslim like me, who had also dreamed of the man in white. She spoke with tears in her eyes about how Jesus found her, healed her wounds, and gave her a new life. Her words pierced me like well-aimed arrows. For the first time, someone was putting into words everything I felt but couldn't explain. I was so immersed in the story that I didn't hear the door open. When I looked up, my younger brother was already in the room. He looked straight at the phone in my hands. My heart leaped into my throat. Panicked, I tried to lock the screen, turn the device around, hide it, but it was too late. "What are you watching?" he asked, narrowing his eyes. "It's just a story," I murmured, my voice trailing off. But he walked over, snatched the phone from my hand, and with a few taps started the video from the beginning. There was the woman talking about the Bible, about Isa al-Masih, calling him Lord and Savior. My brother's face hardened. "You are watching Christian lies." And before I could explain or say anything, he ran off screaming for my father with a fury greater than he was. The house became a battlefield. My father came in screaming, his cell phone trembling in his hand. His eyes burned like embers. "What abomination is this?" "It's nothing, Baba, I swear." I couldn't even finish my sentence. The slap came like a storm, fast, without warning. I fell to the floor with the taste of blood in my mouth. My brother locked the door from the outside, obeying my father's orders. I heard my father call the local imam, then two of my uncles. Within an hour, 3 men were in my room. My father, my oldest uncle, and the imam. The air grew heavy, thick, and filled with judgment. The imam sat in front of me, his expression grave. "Layla, we hear you're listening to Shaitan's whispers." I shook my head, terrified. "No, I just wanted to understand." My father huffed in anger. The imam began reciting verses from the Quran in a low voice, then sprinkled water on me as if driving out something evil. He pressed his hand against my forehead and declared, "She was taken by a jinn. That's what's leading you astray." I wanted to scream, "It's not a jinn, it's Jesus," but I didn't dare. My throat was dry. My body was shaking. They said I was mentally fragile, spiritually in danger. They forbade me from touching any cell phone, computer, or book other than the Quran. They said it was out of love, to protect me. But love that locks doors and closes windows is never love. I spent the next few days trapped in my room. The window was jammed. The doorknob had a key on the outside. Food was scarce, left on the floor in silence. The first night, I cried nonstop. The second night, there were no tears left. And then something started to happen. On the third night, I knelt on the ground without turning toward Mecca, without reciting a single word of Arabic. I simply closed my eyes and whispered, "Jesus, I know almost nothing about you, but I know you saw me. I know you called me yours. Please don't leave me now." The prayer was simple, but something about it opened a space within me. I heard no voices, no light shone, but the fear that had always gripped me began to loosen. The shame that had always enveloped me receded a little. For the first time, locked in there and completely alone, I felt a presence. Peace. Small, but real. My father thought the lock on the door would prevent me from following Jesus, but he didn't understand that in that cell, I already belonged to someone else, and this new master didn't need to imprison me. He freed me even within the walls. By the third day, my body was already weak from the lack of food, but my spirit was more alive than ever. I knew that if I had the chance, even if it cost me everything, I would choose Jesus. This opportunity came sooner than I imagined. On the fourth day, as the sun was beginning to set, I heard a knock on the door. It wasn't loud. It was soft, rhythmic, almost timid. I approached slowly and heard a whisper. "Layla, it's me, Aisha." The name was familiar. She was my neighbor. Over the years, she'd always been kind to me. Sometimes when she saw me last in line, she'd give me a piece of bread still warm from the oven. Other times, she'd leave sprigs of mint on my windowsill with notes saying, "For your tea." She was a simple woman, but with a look of compassion that penetrated any barrier. And in that moment, just with my name whispered on the other side of the door, I knew something was about to change. I knew little about Aisha's life. She had always been a reserved neighbor, her face covered, her gaze sweet but distant. We had never exchanged more than a few polite words. But there, with her calling me softly from behind the locked door, everything changed. "How do you know I'm here?" I asked, my voice almost breaking, my heart racing. "On the other side," she answered firmly, without fear. "I heard the screams, and I know what they think you did." After a brief silence, her voice softened. "Layla, I'm a Christian, and I can help you get out of here." My breath caught. Never in my entire life had anyone said these words with such simplicity and courage. I am a Christian. Whenever I'd heard that name before, it had been laced with contempt, with warning, with judgment. But now it came with compassion, with promise, with a way out. "What if they catch you?" I asked, my voice trembling. "I know the risks," she replied. "But you prayed, didn't you? Asked for help? He's answering, and I'm just part of it." That same night, when the house was plunged into silence and shadows, Aisha returned. With precise hands, she slid a small piece of wire under the door. "It's for the lock," she whispered hurriedly. I was shaking all over, not just from my lack of practice in trying to open a door like that, but from the enormity of what I was about to do. One click. It sounded loud as thunder inside the house. I froze, but then I slowly pushed the door open and walked out. The corridor seemed like a sea of invisible eyes. Every shadow could hide a danger. I took nothing. No clothes, no souvenirs, no objects. I only carried with me the irregular air of my breath and my new certainty. I took with me only fear and the decision not to turn back. Aisha moved with precision, as if she'd memorized every corner of that darkness years ago. She led me across the yard to a small gate hidden among the bushes. I hadn't even known it existed. On the other side was a narrow, dirty but open alley. At that moment, that alley seemed more beautiful than any garden. The air outside was dense, heavy, but different. It wasn't freedom yet, but it was the path to it. We walked quickly in silence, like shadows crossing the night. When we arrived at Aisha's house, she gave me water, fresh bread, and a simple blanket. I sat on the living room floor, still trying to figure out if all of this was real. Then she knelt before me, her eyes serious, firm, but full of tenderness. "Layla," she said, "before anything, I need to ask you, do you want to follow him? Not just run away from your father, not just escape fear. Do you want to give your life to Jesus, the only one who can truly save you?" Tears blinded me. I remembered the dream, the man in white, the voice that said, "You are mine." I knew, and in that moment, my heart screamed louder than my fears. "Yes," I whispered. "Yes, even if it costs me everything, even my life." Aisha smiled, her eyes brimming with tears. She held my hands tightly and began to pray. I didn't understand all the words, but each one seemed to ignite something inside me, a fire, a warmth that burned not on the outside but on the inside. When she finished, I closed my eyes and said my own prayer. No script, no rituals, just me and him. "Jesus, I believe that you are real, that you came to me. I give my life. I am yours." There was no thunder, no voice from heaven, just a peace so deep, so firm, so immense. It felt like home itself. For the first time in my life, I felt like I was home, even though I didn't know exactly where I was. And in that moment, everything changed. The soul that once belonged to a man now belonged to the King of Kings. Later that night, Aisha contacted a secret group linked to an underground church. In the middle of the night, we were taken to a meeting point. A man named Yusuf was waiting for us. He didn't say much. He just opened the car door and started driving. During the journey, no one said a word, but with every kilometer I traveled, I felt as if another piece of my soul was being freed. I knew I couldn't go back, never again. It wasn't just my home I was leaving behind. It was everything I had been up until that point. The daughter of a sheikh, the woman without a voice, the Muslim by obligation. Now I was something entirely new, a follower of Jesus. I didn't know what the future held. I didn't know where I would sleep the next day, but I knew one thing. I had chosen. And even if everything fell apart, even if the whole world turned against me, I wouldn't turn back. I thought it would take a while for my family to figure out where I was. But it didn't take long. A week after the escape, I was in a simple shelter, a rundown apartment with peeling paint on the walls, the smell of stale bread, and cold tea in the air. I was sitting by the window, watching the cloudy sky when Aisha came in, clutching her phone tightly, her fingers clenched around it. There was something in her face, something I couldn't quite place, but it made me know instantly that something had happened. "Layla," she said, her voice soft, filled with care and sadness. "You need to know. They declared you dead." I felt my throat close up, as if the air had been knocked out of me. She handed me the phone, and I stared at the screen with trembling hands. It was a screenshot of a group message from our community. My father's words came out cold, hard, like a sentence. "My daughter Layla is no longer part of this family. She is dead to us. May Allah judge her." I read it twice in disbelief. Dead to him. I was already buried. My name, my place in the family, everything I knew was gone as if it had never existed. I handed the phone back to Aisha, trying to control my tears and the trembling in my hands. "I thought this would hurt more," I murmured, my voice breaking. She looked at me for a long moment, as if she wanted to teach me something important. Sometimes the cut is so deep that we don't even feel it at the time. It's later that the pain comes. That night, I lay on the shelter's thin mattress, staring at the cracked ceiling above me. I spent hours remembering how my father called me the pride of the family, the beautiful daughter everyone praised. And now I was nothing, just a void, a name erased. But in the icy silence of that room, another voice echoed within me. The man in white, the gaze that saw everything in me. The voice that said, "You are mine." The next day, Aisha took me to see the underground church, where I would begin my new life. It was nothing like I had imagined. No imposing buildings, no cathedrals with stained glass windows, just a simple living room where 12 people gathered in a circle. Their faces lit with a joy I'd never seen in the mosque or in my own home. When I walked in, no one looked at me with suspicion or pity. They smiled as if they had been waiting for me for a long time. A lady with hands marked by hard work hugged me tightly and whispered in my ear, "Welcome home, daughter, daughter of God, not a servant, not a possession, not a shame, daughter." In that small circle, I heard the pastor talk about baptism, about dying to the past and being reborn into a new life. I knew instantly that this was what I wanted. A few days later, they filled a small plastic tub with ice-cold water. I stepped in slowly, feeling the cold cut into the skin of my feet. The pastor looked at me with a gentle smile. "Layla, would you like to choose a new name to mark this new life in Christ?" I thought for a moment and answered firmly, "Miriam. It means wished for child." He nodded, still smiling. "Miriam, through your faith in Jesus Christ, we baptize you in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit." When I was plunged into the water, I felt the full weight of my father's harsh words, the shame and the captivity sink with me. But as I emerged, a lightness washed over me, like the first breath after a long time underwater. They wrapped me in a soft towel, and someone read aloud a verse that sank deep into my heart. John 8:36. "So if the Son sets you free, You will be free indeed." Those words covered me like a protective cloak. For the first time, I truly believed. My family had erased me, but God had already written my name in His eternal book. My father rejected me, but my Heavenly Father welcomed me as His daughter. I was Miriam now, and I was free. Many people think that freedom means taking a complete leap into the light, a complete break with the shadows. But the truth is that freedom always carries the scent of the prison you left behind. Even after my baptism, I would still wake in the middle of the night, sweaty and heart-racing, expecting to hear my father's footsteps outside the door. I was still startled by the sound of keys turning in a lock. I dreamed of the walled courtyard of the house with the heavy gates slamming shut. And sometimes in the silence, I could still hear his voice echoing in my mind. "You are mine. You will obey." The scars of the past weren't just in my memory. They lived in every fiber of my body. A sudden gesture from someone nearby made my skin crawl, as if I had to defend myself. My chest tightened when I heard the call to prayer coming from a distant mosque, a sound that brought both longing and fear. It was as if every noise, every shadow carried a piece of that life I was trying to detach myself from. I needed more than ever to relearn what safety meant, something I'd long thought impossible. The shelter I was in became my new normal, a simple place, a small room I shared with another woman named Nadia. She too had her own story of escape, her fears, her wounds. At night, we shared secrets quietly, like children hidden under the covers. Nadia once told me something I've never forgotten. Fear never completely disappears, but love grows and takes its place. At that moment, I clung to that hope with all my strength. I began to become increasingly involved with the underground church. That community wasn't just a group that talked about Jesus. They lived what they preached. They cooked for the sick, prayed for each other by name, and cried together when the pain was severe. Little by little, their love began to undo the knots of lies I had carried since childhood. One day during Bible study, we read Psalm 34:18. "The Lord is near to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit." At that moment, I couldn't hold back the tears. I felt as if those words were a balm for my soul. It was then that I began writing in a small notebook that I carried with me. Whenever the old fear tried to return, I would look for a verse to overcome it. When my father's voice whispered in my mind, I wrote it down. "I have called you by your name. You are mine." Isaiah 43:1. When shame tried to suffocate me, I wrote, "Therefore there is now no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus." Romans 8:1. These words became my daily medicine. But the cure I was looking for wasn't just for me. Little by little, I began to share my story with other women who were also hidden, trapped in their own prisons. We did it subtly through whispered conversations, coded messages, and even handwritten notes hidden under doors. Many weren't yet ready to embrace faith in Jesus, but they all came closer when I spoke about the man in white, the one who sees beyond walls and lies. I told them, "He sees you. You have not been forgotten." I still lived cautiously. I used a different name in public and avoided neighborhoods that might put me at risk. There were days when I was overwhelmed by longing, especially for my youngest siblings. Thinking about them and knowing I might never see them again was a heavy burden to bear. But whenever the urge to return arose, I remembered the darkness I left behind and the light that found me within it. I carry the scars. Yes, I still feel the fire of that pain, that struggle. But I know that fire can destroy and it can also purify. Today I am free, not because my past has disappeared. It is still with me, but because Jesus entered it and transformed it, taking me as his daughter. If someone had told me years ago that one day I would be here, free, calling myself a child of God, I would have laughed or cried, because for so long I believed I belonged to a man, my father. I believed I belonged to a distant God who turned his face away while I suffered. But now I know I'm not my father's property. I'm not a religious leader's wife. I'm not a disgrace to my family. I am the daughter of the King of Kings. When I first read Psalm 68:5, "Father of the fatherless and defender of widows is God in his holy dwelling," I felt those words had been written for me, for my pain, for my new beginning. I lost my earthly father, not through death, but through betrayal. And in his place, God himself intervened. The king I belong to today is completely different from the man who ruled my childhood. He doesn't use fear to control me. He doesn't hide me out of shame. He doesn't demand my silence to maintain a false reputation. My king calls me by name. He walks with me in the light. He clothes me with honor. And when he says, "You are mine," it's not possession. It's love. A love that sets me free. I think a lot about that night I left, how I left everything behind. No family, no possessions, no certainty about the next day. In that moment, I was stripped of everything I knew as security or identity. And yet, in that void, I received something I never imagined possible. I received a deep peace, one that doesn't depend on circumstances or a safe place. I have received a joy that blossoms even in the midst of life's storms. I have received a light that shines despite the shadows around me. I have received a hope that no one, not even the worst situations, can take away from me. Because when Jesus finds you, he breaks the chains that bound you, and there is no going back to the prisons of the past. Following Jesus has never been an easy path. I paid a high price. I lost my family, my home, and the life that for years I thought would be my destiny. But along with these losses, I received something I could never have imagined or planned: a new family made up of brothers and sisters who love me unconditionally, a heavenly Father who never abandons me, and a future that no one can erase or destroy. That's why I tell my story, not to evoke pity, but because I know that somewhere in this world, there's a woman right now locked in a dark room, feeling alone and desperate. I know there are still men who use the name of God to justify abuse, to keep people trapped in fear and shame. And I also know that there are those who read the Bible and instead of finding hope, find doubt, wondering if God is truly good. To all of you, I say yes, he is good. But perhaps you need to find him outside the walls you've always known, away from the prisons that try to imprison you. If this testimony touched your heart in any way, please know you're not alone in your questions or struggles. Many of us have walked this difficult path before you. By subscribing to this channel, you'll join a community of seekers and believers who understand the unique challenges you face. Each week, we share new stories of hope and freedom, testimonies of those who found light in their darkest moments. We respect your journey and your privacy completely. Whether you're just curious, questioning your faith, or already on your path to Christ, this space is for you. Subscribe by clicking below, and you'll receive these powerful stories directly as we publish them. No judgment, no pressure, just authentic testimonies that might speak to the very questions you've been carrying silently in your heart. We understand watching these videos may come with risk. Your subscription is private. Consider using private browsing for added security if you need to. We share these testimonies knowing some viewers may need to watch in secret. Your safety matters to us. Subscribe only if it's safe to do so. Remember, the same Jesus who found us in our isolation can find you too. You don't have to walk this path alone. Join us, and let's discover truth together. If you've made it this far and heard my story, I thank you from the bottom of my heart. And if something I said touched your soul, don't keep it to yourself. Share this video. Share so another woman somewhere hears about the man in white who sees her. Share so that someone lost in the darkness discovers that there is light. Share so that the silence cries out the name of the God who hears and responds. I left that life as the wife of a religious leader, but today I live as a daughter of the King of Kings. Once marked by sin and rejection, I am now marked by God's unconditional love. Once I was a possession claimed by the will of a man. Now I am a promise sealed by the sovereign grace of my Heavenly Father. And if he could find me, if he could reach me, I believe with all my heart that he can reach you too. I leave you with the words that became the anthem of my new life, the truth that transformed everything for me. So if the sun sets you free, You will be free indeed. John 8:36.